asking God, why do bad things happen? And in the movie, you see, I was pulled out to the edge of the universe, and I looked at everything, and God said to me, "Look at that. It's perfect. It's balanced." And I was like, "Oh wow, you know what? It really is perfect. Something happens over here, it gets made up over. I guess wow, it is perfect." And I didn't put this in the movie, but really the most profound moment was that I uh said at one point, at that point that I'm speaking with God, I said, God said to me,
Welcome to the Self Care Goddess podcast, where healing stories, practical self care strategies, and science backed tools to regulate stress, feel calm, grounded, and energized come together to help you reclaim your vitality. I'm your host, Rita Savoya, holistic nutritionist, trauma-informed breathwork coach, and founder of Breathwork Barista. This podcast is for women who are ready to restore their energy and radiance, reconnect with their bodies, reawaken their inner power, and redefine self-care as a way of being. Through science meets soul practices, restorative mind-body tools, and real stories of transformation, we'll explore how true well-being can help you live with more joy, vibrant health, and authentic connection to yourself and those you love. Take a deep breath in, let it go, and let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Self Care Goddess podcast with today's theme, the psychedelic renaissance, why psychedelic therapy is transforming mental health, with a very special guest today. So before I introduce him, let's walk the talk here on the Self Care Goddess podcast, and let's tune out the outer world for just a couple moments here. So I invite you, if you can, close your eyes or maybe even lower your gaze, or if you can't, just stare at something for just a few moments and notice your breath. So follow your breath flowing in and out of your body. Breathing a little slower, a little deeper than usual, just giving yourself a little pause here, a little moment to check in with any area of the body that maybe you might be feeling some tension, some stress around that area, some tightness. I invite us to allow the exhales to flow into that area. So exhale through that area. And research shows that it actually helps to soften that part of the body. And if you have more than one, just maybe choose the one that's really calling for some loving today. Inhaling a little deeper and slower than usual. And then exhaling, letting that exhale come out of that area. And see if you can invite more softening and relaxing. It doesn't take long, just a couple of minutes here to really tune in with our bodies, getting out of our heads into our bodies, tapping in this beautiful innate intelligence of the body that most of us are often disconnected from. I now invite you to channel the breaths into the area of the heart. So allowing the inhales and the exhales to flow in and out of the heart area. This beautiful organ that's keeping you alive without even noticing it. Where attention goes, energy flows. So let's energize this beautiful organ that does so much for you every single minute. And in this space of immense gratitude for your heart, I now invite you to visualize someone that you're grateful for today. Visualize this person as if they were right here in front of you. And I invite you to smile and radiate all the love, the gratitude, and appreciation from your heart to their heart. And on your next inhale, I invite you to send that gratitude and that love, send it back to you for being here, taking the time out of your busy day for this breath work, mini session, mini reset, mini pause, for doing the work. Thank yourself and give yourself some loving, much needed. On your next inhale, flutter your eyes open, come back to us. Thank you for participating in that quick coherence technique, my own little version of it from the Heart Math Institute. Just a really quick way to reset, to pause. And this is something that you can also teach your kids to do as well. So, today's session, today's guest is someone who is helping shape one of the most fascinating conversations in modern wellness: mental health and human consciousness. Zappy Zapolin is an entrepreneur, filmmaker, and global advocate for responsible psychedelic healing. Often described as a leading voice in the psychedelic renaissance, Zappy has spent the past 2 decades exploring how ancient plant medicines and modern neuroscience can work together to support deep healing, trauma recovery, and personal transformation. He is the director of the documentary The Reality of Truth, which has reached more than 25 million viewers worldwide and features voices such as Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, and Ram Dass, exploring the nature of consciousness and spirituality. Zappy also helped document the powerful healing journey of NBA champion Lamar Odom in the film Lamar Odom Reborn, which follows Lamar's path of recovery and transformation after years of addiction and personal struggle. Today, Zappy is the founder of Psychedelic Concierge, a certification program dedicated to training ethical, trauma-informed guides in the emerging field of psychedelic facilitation. His mission is clear: to help bring safe, responsible, and conscious psychedelic healing into the mainstream while ensuring the next generation of facilitators is trained with integrity, compassion, and professionalism. Today, we're going to explore the science, the spirituality, and the responsibility that comes with this powerful movement. Wow, what a bio. How are you today, Zappy? Thanks for joining us.
Well, I thank you. It's great to be here. After that little breath, I feel very relaxed. It's amazing how breath can do that, and how breath with psychedelics are fundamental to the experience. So I'm excited to be
Yes.
here. I miss doing your class in person like I did a few weeks ago. That was taking those two breath classes from you was really profound. I had some beautiful moments that I still remember during those. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're right, we'll get to that for sure in terms of how breath and psychedelics are just beautiful companions and how can definitely help you go deeper, integrate the experience. But for now, give us a little more background on your personal journey and what first sparked this
Sure.
curiosity you have about psychedelics.
So I had what I would describe as a spiritual midlife crisis.
Mhm.
In 2010, right around then, I kind of did everything that society told me that I needed to do to be fulfilled, to live the American dream, go to school, have a family, make money, be a philanthropist, and just if you can do that, you're going to be totally fulfilled. And I did it. I made millions of dollars. I had an amazing family. I was a philanthropist, having all these experiences. But there was something really deep in me where I was like, you know what? I'm having nice experiences, but I cannot say I'm fulfilled like they told me I would be. And I was a little freaked out. You start thinking like, what's the use? Everything they told me to do is like, it's led to this, and this isn't so great. There's just something deeper. There's got to be. And I remembered back to this psychedelic experience that I had when I was young in my teens, and it was to really inform the rest of my life, where I took a pretty big dose of psychedelics with a friend. And at one point during it, I looked at my hand and I could see that it was trillions of atoms and they were vibrating at this certain frequency. And then I looked over at my friend and he was the exact same atoms, but like a slightly different frequency than me. And then I saw the air in between us was also a different frequency, the table. I was like, oh my God, when I take off my five senses, there's so much more going on here. And it stayed with me my whole life. But when I reached this moment of crisis in my life, I thought, I got to go back inside of myself. And I had heard about people going down to the jungle, sitting with a shaman, doing ayahuasca. And I was like, wow, maybe that's what I have to do, is go inside myself for some answers and, do it with a legitimate shaman, go to the jungle, get off the grid and just like see if there's something worth living for. And so I went down to Costa Rica. I'm sorry, I went down to Peru at that time with a group. I had come from a marketing background, so I always had camera people around me and stuff. And so I said, well, if I'm going to take this journey, I might as well film it, and maybe I could share it with other people. It'll be helpful for somebody. I know, karmically, it's good to share when you're doing stuff. So I got really lucky. One of my friends who was supporting me in the movie, he knew actress Michelle Rodriguez from Fast and Furious, and she was interested also in ayahuasca at the time. He told me, and so we went over to our house in Venice and we started talking about the trip and everything. And she was like, that's it. I'm in. Let's do this. And I was like, wow, okay, this is really happening. So we flew down to Peru with a group, and we wound up having multiple psychedelic experiences over the course of, a couple weeks. We were there. We had amazing shamans with us. We went to the top of a mountain in Peru, 15,000 feet. And we did something called San Pedro, which is a cactus, Wachuma. And we drank the San Pedro, and it really connects you to nature. That's what, each psychedelic has its own thing that it's really good at. And San Pedro is incredible for linking you back to nature. And so we walked down, 15 of us, we hiked down this mountain. Nobody even slipped a step, but we were so in tune. And the movie that came out of this experience, The Reality of Truth, you can see Michelle Rodriguez in there. She talks about how that San Pedro experience let her drop 20 years of heavy pain that she couldn't get rid of. And she just was like, oh, I'm free. And so a couple days later, we hiked into the jungle and we wound up sitting with ayahuasca, which is a vine from the rainforest. They take a vine and a leaf and they brew it together, and you drink the ayahuasca. And the ayahuasca is like a feminine energy. It's like your grandmother. They always say mother ayahuasca or grandmother or Pachamama. And it is, really incredible as far as the experience itself, but also that you get connected to that feminine spirit. And so for Michelle, she was able to step into her feminine in a new way. I was able to, feel parts of myself that, I kind of in my Western society kind of pushed down and stuff like that. And so, that was a profound experience. It lasted several hours. I describe in the movie, one of my deepest moments was asking God, why do bad things happen? And in the movie, you see, I was pulled out to the edge of the universe, and I looked at everything, and God said to me, look at that. It's perfect. It's balanced. And I was like, oh, wow, you know what? It really is perfect. Something happens over here. It gets made up over here. I guess wow, it is perfect. And I didn't put this in the movie, but really the most profound moment was that I at one point, at that point that I'm speaking with God, God said to me, do you know how you're breathing right now? How you're doing it? Do you know how you're digesting your food and growing your hair? Like, you're doing it, but do you know how? And I was like, no, I don't know how I'm doing it. And then God said to me, then what makes you think I need your help? And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like, I don't even know if I'm breathing. If I don't do that for 2 minutes, I die. Why am I going to get all upset because these people aren't listening to me over here? I don't even know how I'm breathing. I'm just like, and God said, just like enjoy it. And I was like, okay, I got the license to enjoy this thing, this unknown thing, of why am I here and where am I going next? But to still be in gratitude with all that uncertainty, like just really, kind of shaped the rest of my life to be in gratitude. And the crazy part was that when we came out like several hours later from this journey, even though we were different sizes, people had drank different amounts of the medicine, we all came out like in the same moment. It was like the ayahuasca frequency just like left the room, and we all opened our eyes and we were like, oh, wait, you just came out. I just, it was like, it was a mind
Wow.
blower, you know? And I
Mm-hmm.
started to laugh. I say this in the movie, but I started to laugh because I was like, oh my God, I just got the whole human cosmic joke, which is you got God with the white beard and Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, all these men. And I'm talking to God, and it was a woman. It was
Wow.
absolutely a woman. And, at least 50%. And so, after that experience, when I came back into regular life and I hear people say God, the Father, He, Him, all this stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
just laugh and I'm like, oh my God, the whole thing that you guys are basing everything on is 180% wrong at the basis. So, I just, it just adds a lot of levity to your life when you have realizations like that. And so I came back from that experience and I started to tell everybody, oh my God, you got to go do plant medicine. You got to sit with a shaman. And the sad part
Mm-hmm.
was that the people that really needed it, friends of mine, they would say to me, Zappy, I want to do it. But if I tell my parents right now that I'm going to go to the jungle and sit with a shaman, they are going to put me in a mental institution right now. It can't happen. And so I was like there and I was like, oh, I got to find a Western medicine approach to this that they could come through into this path. And this is now 2015. Um, and somebody showed me the research on ketamine, which I didn't know much about at all. I knew it was an anesthetic that they use in uh, surgeries every day, but they showed me the research and they realized that the ketamine in a low dose is 70% effective at breaking treatment resistant depression, even if nothing else has worked. And I was like, how can that be? And it turns out the way they found out it worked was in Vietnam, they were doing amputations of limbs out in the battlefield, and they were using all kinds of anesthetics like ether, morphine, ketamine, and they were doing these procedures. And after the war, they looked back and they realized that the people that had the ketamine anesthetic had not committed suicide at anywhere near the same rates as everybody else. So they were like, what the heck's going on with the ketamine here? So they sent it to Yale University. They did a couple thousand person study. This wasn't like a 20-person study like usually. There's
Mm-hmm.
thousands of people. And they came up with this low dose because if you give somebody a high dose, then they're ready for surgery. It knocks them out. They don't remember a thing. But if you give somebody a low dose, it's a dissociative. So it's not a hallucinogenic like the other psychedelics. It's actually dissociative. What that means is it's basically separating your left and right brain and allowing them to communicate however they want without your ego getting involved in it. You just
Mm-hmm.
are laying there with an eye shade and you're just seeing, 80% of your brain is turned on when you look under a scan. And so I had to try it, and I was like, I got to see what's up with this. And so I convinced a doctor down here in Florida to give me the Yale protocol, which at the time was an IV of ketamine. And 5 minutes into it, when it hit me, I was just like, oh, wow, this is it. This is the Western medicine. It's FDA approved. It's safe. It doesn't affect your breathing. And it's really calm. Like, this is something that anyone can experience. And so I started to really advocate for ketamine. In the meantime, I was, this psychonaut. I had tried all these different psychedelics and I knew, they all have their different benefits. You got the, mushroom microdose to give you some joy and the San Pedro to connect you to nature and ibogaine to break addiction and all these things. They all have their different frequency and benefit. And I was like, how can this ibogaine break an addiction? It doesn't even make sense that one session, 12 hours, 24 hours, that this could break a heroin addiction or somebody could drop 2 packs of cigarettes or alcohol. Like, it just didn't make sense. And I was like, I am going to be a guinea pig and I'm going to try the ibogaine.
Mm-hmm.
So 2015, late 2015, I did the ibogaine, and it was an incredible experience. I did it in the traditional Bwiti way, with a shaman who was trained by the Bwiti in Africa, and we listened to the Bwiti music, and it was very
Mm-hmm.
interactive with the shaman. But for people who don't know, the ibogaine is taken from the iboga plant, the root of an
Right.
iboga shrub, and they basically just like chip the wood off and you eat the wood, these wood chips, and it has has all these amazing alkaloids in it. One of them is called ibogaine, and they found out that you could basically isolate just the ibogaine alkaloid, and you could give somebody like a full gram of that, and they would have a full total session and come out of that emerge mentally and physically well. There was even science out saying that after the ibogaine, you are on average 1.3 years younger than in the hour
Mm.
physiologically than in the hours before. And I was like, oh, this is like incredible. I can't wait. And so I do it. And of course, I find out how it breaks a heroin addiction is a very intense, the Bwiti tribe, they use this to commune with their ancestors and to get answers. And so for me,
Mhm.
I went back into my lineage. I went back into my past. I went into my great great grandfathers. I went into my friend. I went into, all these people that I was able to, go into the past, future, and speak with people at
Mm.
the soul level. And it was so profound that when I came out, even though I didn't have a classic addiction, other than sugar and coffee, which I'm sure I'm absolutely addicted to. Um, but I just was like, wow, this changes everything. I'm vibrating, kind of feels like my own original frequency that I'm at. And if I go through life now and I use my intuition instead of whatever I'm thinking people want me to do or say or anything. And so it's just been really incredible. It's, over 10 years ago now. And I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, oh my God, I still feel it. I got it. Okay. It's in there. The plant, this frequency, it's here. And so, long story short, it was incorporated into the documentary film, The Reality of Truth. There's a really beautiful part at the end of the movie where this guy, Jerry Powell, uh, took ibogaine for a very serious addiction. He wound up opening a legal licensed plant medicine place in Costa Rica where they do ayahuasca. And the place wasn't even open yet. But you could tell that the desire of people in the United States and around the world was to have a safe, supervised experience. And so Rhythmia from the movie, because, everybody's great in it. Jerry's great. And you get to see Rhythmia. And when that movie ends, at the end, people are just like, oh my God, I think I got to do plant medicine. I think I got to do
Yeah.
ayahuasca. I think I got to go to Rhythmia. And so fast forward now, 10 years, and they've had over 17,000 people go to Rhythmia. Uh,
Mhm.
all kinds of miracles changing people's lives. And the movie The Reality of Truth, which is on Amazon Prime and it's on YouTube, that movie, like you said, it's been seen 25 million times. But what we're most proud of is that they say that it's caused over 1 million people to have a psychedelic experience because they saw the movie. So kind of like,
Wow.
yeah, 1 in 25 people that watches it goes, yeah, I'm doing this. So,
Right.
and that might even be more now just because it's becoming sort of more accepted in society. 10 years ago, it was a little bit, it was touch and go. People didn't really know what it was, or they were
Mhm.
intimidated by that, thinking that they should get off the grid and go do something with, an ancient medicine and ancient tradition. So that's all come around, of course. And ayahuasca told me at that time,
Mhm.
basically, because I was like, oh man, I want everybody to come down here and have this experience. And ayahuasca said to me, God, ayahuasca, Pachamama said, you need to go back and share this and tell everybody about ayahuasca, because ayahuasca has to come out in the United States, California, New York. All these places need ayahuasca. We can't wait for everybody to get the time and the money to come down to Peru and have this, very special experience. Gonna have to be in the cities. And so I was like, okay, well, that's cool for me. And it really took a lot of the heat off because, people along the way, of course, they're gonna, you're always going to have haters, so they would say, oh, this is like you're stealing the indigenous medicine and you're making it Western. And I was like, well, that's what ayahuasca told me to do. I don't know. You go down and talk to ayahuasca and see what she says to you. So I'm just doing
Yeah.
that, And so
Mhm.
that's been a lot of fun. And that, I know I'm talking a lot, but I was
Love
showing
it.
that movie all around the country. And I got a call. Somebody came up to me at one of the screenings that I was doing, and they said, "Hey, I'm friends with Lamar Odom, the basketball player, Kardashian. He's not in a good situation right now, and I wonder if you'd talk to him about plant medicine." And so I was like,
Mm,
"Oh wow, I'd love to." He's such a iconic figure, and people really think they know him through reality TV. I was thinking if he changes, people are going to really know. Where with other celebrities who weren't on the Kardashians and all that, they might think it was something else or some lifestyle shift. But here, they would be able to determine whether the Lamar that they knew had changed from this experience. And so, uh, I, convinced him and his team and his family and stuff that ketamine would be the right thing for him to do, because he tried everything else and it wasn't really working. And what people don't know, but you find out in the movie, is he's had a lot of trauma. He's had,
mm,
his mom died when he was 12 years old of cancer. He had a 6-month-old son pass away. And he just
mm,
never processed the trauma. He would try to stay busy and high and stuff, just not to think about
mm,
it.
mm,
And so I was like, look, if you go inside yourself for some answers, and, I think this is going to be great. He's an amazing guy. He wanted this for himself. He didn't care what anybody else was saying. And so he came, he did a series of ketamine treatments. It was amazing for him. He got some clarity and things that he needed to get right there. And so after several months of working with him, I approached him and said, "Look, Lamar, I think with your addiction profile, you are going to have to go do ibogaine, because um, there's no other way to get this monkey off your back. And in fact, it's an African root, and you're an African American guy. Like, maybe you're supposed to be
mm,
having this, and
mm,
you've just been cut off culturally from it."
mm,
Um,
mm,
and he agreed, and he was, he wanted to get physically better and mentally better. And so I brought him down to Mexico to work with the folks from Ambio, who are one of the leading uh, clinics in the world right now. And it's very sad you have to go down to Mexico to do this, because a lot of
mm,
veterans are going down there and stuff. And it's like, why can't we have this in our own country? And the answer is pretty tragic. It's that the drug and alcohol rehab industry counts on people failing and going back multiple times to treatment, and they get paid by insurance companies, tens of thousands of dollars each time. So they're not motivated to have anybody like get better overnight, and so
mm,
I think this is going to change very soon, but in the moment, you have to go down there. And so we went down. He did the ibogaine with the doctor. It was absolutely amazing. 48 hours after he had the treatment, we were headed back to LA, and he was in the van. And he said, "You know what?" He goes, "I feel so good physically and mentally right now." He goes, "I think I can make a comeback in professional basketball." And we were like, "Wow, that's awesome." And his trainer, who's a bodyguard of his, said to him, "Lamar," he's like, "Dude, take it easy." He's like, "You're 40 years old. You'd have to work out 4 hours a day. You can't be smoking marijuana, the whole thing." And Lamar's like, "I know what I got to do. I'm doing it." And we were all like, "Oh, okay." And he just trained for several months on his own. Nobody motivating him, nobody driving him. And he wound up playing in a professional basketball game in Dubai. And it was like his personal Rocky moment, where he was like, he's like, "I'm not the player that I used to be. I'm 40, and I can't play every night, but like, I'm supposed to be dead, and I just played in a
right.
professional game, And so he went, he was back in the States. He wound up reconnecting in a really beautiful way with his kids. They moved in to live with him. He was just incredible. He hasn't touched hard drugs in 6 years since he did that ibogaine. And
Incredible.
the most amazing testimonial that I've ever gotten was from him, because he called me up a couple days after Kobe Bryant died, who he played with, and it was like a brother to him. And he called me and he said, "Zappy," he goes, "I knew the night Kobe died that I could go out and use drugs and everybody was going to just give me a pass on it." He goes, "But since the day of the ibogaine," he goes, "I just didn't have the desire to do it." And I was like, "Oh my God, like what could be better than that?" I see people in AA and different programs like that all the time, and they're struggling to maintain their sobriety. They are I watch them. Let's say I've been to some meetings with friends, and I see these people and they're like, I'm sober. This is amazing. And they're like smoking their vape, and they're, drinking 6 cups of coffee with 10 sugars, and they're on Xanax from the doctor. And they're like, I got to be back to a meeting in 2 hours so I don't use, and I'm like, that's not a life. That's not sobriety. I'm like, why don't you just go do ibogaine or do iboga and like just get this thing off your back and just enjoy your life and not have to like even think about it. And
Right.
so that is like that's really stuck with me. And I've brought dozens and dozens, if not over 100 people to do iboga or ibogaine. And I had the good pleasure of going to an iboga retreat where in Mexico, where you were the breathwork facilitator and part of this team, and a couple weeks ago. And I brought my ex-wife, I brought her best friend, several people from my psychedelic concierge program that wanted to experience iboga in a traditional way, with Michael Cassidy, who's like one of the all-time OG Iboga people trained by the Bwiti tribe in Africa. And
Hmm.
I was like, and I knew that my program manager from Psychedelic Concierge, Lois Duncan, who had had a transformation with Iboga with Michael, she was going to be there, and other people were going to hold space. And I was like, this is the one to bring friends and family to. So I brought all these folks to come, and it was a transformational experience the way they do it. Um, and to have the iboga day, have the recovery day, then have the
Yeah.
integration day with you, and then do their second iboga, have another recovery day, another integration, breathing with you. And so it's such an amazing experience that people get to have, that it's just like such an honor to watch people go through it. Because usually, transformations like this, like really big transformations, as you know, traditionally take months or years or decades to overcome. And here these
Right.
people were, in 7 days, transformed. Their
Yeah.
energy was softer and more zen. And as I describe it, it's like they're vibrating at their own frequency, so that when things
Hmm.
happen, they can just sort of, does this resonate with me or not?
Right,
And
right. Or do I want to react in this way, or do I have options? I feel like it just opens up
yeah,
options for you. You don't need to follow that same program of whatever it is, anger or guilt or,
yeah.
grief, whatever it is, that you have options, which is great. Well, no, that this is incredible. I love it. So in your opinion, because it was a very powerful story, Lamar, but just in general, is there a criteria for someone to be more like successful at it or have a better outcome? Is there something that maybe they can do before the actual experience to prepare, or what do you think is going on there for
Yeah,
those that are
that's a
having a
really
better
good
experience?
question. That is a really good question. There is, and this is across all psychedelics, and it has to do with what's called set and setting. And that
Mm,
is the person's mindset when they're going into it, and the
mhm.
setting being who they're with and where it is. Because a lot of times when people have a bad experience or something like that, it's because they weren't in the right set and setting. They took it at a concert with 10,000 people, or they
Right.
took it and their parents came home, or, just like these things that can spin you out. And so when you're with a professional and a professional group, they
Mhm.
are going to curate that set and setting for you. They're going to prep you ahead of time. There's quite a bit of prep as far as what you're eating,
Mm,
what plant medicines you may be taking leading up, what medications are you on. There's a real preparation, and a lot, just some journaling, and, trying to get your intention right for what you're trying to achieve. And so that's really important. Then the second part is what happens during the medicine, critical. Who are you with? Where are you? What are these people going to do if it gets intense or scary, or you know, whatever the scenario is, that they are holding this container with you in a way that's going to be supportive and help you through. Because honestly, one of the most incredible things about breath work is that when somebody's having a psychedelic experience, usually if it starts getting intense or scary or whatever, if the person holding space for them just says, I'm here with you. You're safe. Let's breathe together. Let's just
Mhm.
breathe together. And they take a couple breaths, and by two breaths, they're like, they're fine. And it's like,
Right.
wow,
Yeah.
breath. Okay. If just breath, they're good. But you have to, if you don't understand that, then you might be like, oh my God, what's going on? Are you okay?
Mhm.
Maybe I should call a doctor. So it's like very critical to be in the right setting with the right
Yes.
people. And
Yes,
then
and that's why you say that the medicine opens the door, but it's the guides that really lead the journey, right? And the importance of
that's it.
having these guides fully trained to for the experience.
Critical. Yeah, and then
Mm,
the shamans will always say that the medicine does 50% and then you have to do the other
mhm.
50%. So a
Yes,
lot of
yes,
people that get stuck in this plant medicine loop where they just keep doing ayahuasca or something like that and going to retreats and stuff, they never integrate what they experience
yes.
into their life. So
Hmm.
that's sort of the third component to have somebody have a breakthrough experience, is to help them to integrate it afterwards into their life, keep them focused on what their intentions are, keep them journaling to figure out where they're at, keep them breathing and having like a daily practice like meditation or breath that can bring them back to that present moment awareness state that they were in. Critical. If those three things, the prep, the during, and the after, are done right, I've never seen somebody not have a breakthrough, amazing experience with psychedelics.
100%. I completely agree. And in your opinion, who's doing it right? Is it mostly the prep that people, most of these companies or just people guides are doing is more prep, or are they doing more integration? In my opinion, from what I've seen, there's very little integration. There's a lot of
Yeah,
prep that happens. I feel like there's definitely a market for improving the integration piece, because
yeah,
oftentimes that's why these people go back, because they feel like they haven't been able to integrate it and they need that guidance again, that plant medicine guidance. But because it's obviously easier as well, right? To
yeah,
not
yeah. To
integrate. I
not
mean, integrating is
integrate.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably the hardest part for me.
It is. It is. And to that point, I think, a lot of times people, get excited about holding space for people with psychedelics because it's done so much for them. So they'll give a little bit of prep and then they'll sit with the person and try to give them a good experience. And then they're like, all right, great, you did it. And the person goes off and they're just like, wait a minute, like, with ayahuasca, it's like some of these things are very difficult to process after. You're like, with ayahuasca, you might be like, why did the snake turn into my mother? And like, why, why this and why that? And if somebody's
Yeah.
not there to try to, help you to move through that, it's going to be confusing. And you might think, well, I'll just try it again. Maybe I go deeper this
Hmm.
time. But
Yes.
I think it's critical to give somebody a daily practice. So, like when you see the Lamar Odom movie in there, I gave him a formula, which was ketamine plus ibogaine plus a daily practice so that he could tap back into that through meditation, through breathing. We did. Because life's still going to come at you. The point of psychedelic medicine is to create a more neuroplastic state for your brain, and that
Mhm.
means that instead of these rigid patterns that you have, maybe hereditary, maybe trauma has created these patterns. A lot of people have this like, I'm a failure, nobody's going to love me, nothing works out. And so anything comes in, even if it's positive, they run it through that negative filter. And
Right.
so the psychedelics, as you have a good experience with that and you build it up and you build new neural pathways, all of a sudden you're neuroplastic. And when something bad happens or unexpected, which is going to happen in life no matter what,
Yeah.
it doesn't hit those rigid patterns. It hits something that's more like, oh, well, who knows, maybe this is meant to happen, maybe this is
Right.
actually a good thing, let me see what happens. It's not. So that neuroplasticity, I think, is what the goal should be, and to maintain that through a daily practice where you can, because you've got these new amazing pathways in your brain, in your consciousness, to dive into really deep. And so as soon, before I did ibogaine, I was already a meditator for, 20 years, and I enjoyed it, but a lot of times it was really difficult to go deep, when your thoughts are racing and you're just trying to settle yourself, it can be difficult. And however, with the ibogaine, after I did it, I realized like as soon as I started my mantra, I would just drop into this deep place because I already had those pathways and a place to
Yeah.
go. And so I think
And it's
these two
about,
things go perfect.
yes, yes. And it's about repetition, right? So that you are paving those new neural pathways and eventually those other ones die off. So those stories, those limiting beliefs, and that's what breathwork integration does as well. Because there's so much when we talk about plant medicine, you can literally replace plant medicine with breathwork, and it does very, very similar in terms of effect. And so, yes, the more we repeat those and strengthen those neural pathways, the more they become automatic. Like that's, it's going to be automatic for you. You don't have to
Yeah.
think of it. And you can go deeper. I love how you mentioned that. It's so true. So yeah, and it's just
Yeah, it's like
available.
muscle memory,
Yes.
of your mind getting muscle memory for, oh yes, I'm gonna breathe and then I'm gonna drop in, or I'm gonna mantra and drop in. But I a lot of times people say to me, well, Sappy, I don't think people even need psychedelics because they can just use their breath and they can meditate. And I'm like, well, yeah, in a perfect world, absolutely, you don't need anything, you have it all. But if you just came back from war, or you were
Mhm.
traumatized, or you have childhood trauma, and somebody says, just sit down, clear your mind, it's like, it's not happening. Okay. Because
No,
those are, you're in fight or flight. And one of the
exactly.
things I
Nervous
really
system.
love about, yeah, no, I was going to say one of the things I love about ketamine is some science that came out recently that's, just a game changer as it relates to this, because they say that you have this area of your brain called your default mode network. And
Mm.
your default mode network is always vacillating between anxiety and creativity. And it's going back and forth. It's, you're supposed to be kind of in the middle. Some people, it gets jammed into anxiety, the whole thing. And so there's a mechanism in your default mode network. It's called your lateral habenula. And your lateral habenula is recording all the stress that you've ever had in your whole life. And when it becomes too much, your brain, excuse me, goes into burst mode. And burst mode is a completely different brain state. And when your brain's in burst mode, it shuts off your dopamine production. So you're not getting any
Wow.
dopamine. And that's your joy and everything.
Motivation.
And so
Yeah.
they say that they say that the first time that you do medical ketamine, it takes your brain out of burst mode. So all of a sudden you start getting your dopamine back, and you're like, oh my God, I want to live. Life is amazing. And so they just really found this out recently. And so you can imagine how many people post pandemic, with wars happening and the economy and the environment, like they're really petrified. It's been too much. They're in burst mode. So I want to guess that 50% of the people that get the benefit from ketamine is basically taking their brain out of burst mode, giving them their dopamine back, and creating the science on the ketamine is that when it metabolizes, it grows new neural pathways in the brain
Mhm.
around
Wow.
these trauma patterns and things. So
That's so
it's really
fascinating.
beautiful. Mhm. It's so cool that we have these things, and you know, I love the fact that psychedelic medicine is here at the same time as AI, and that as we try to handle AI and the responsibility that comes with that, that we also have psychedelic medicine to support us in that journey. So it feels
Yeah.
kind of divinely sent.
Right? Yes, nothing's coincidental, that's for sure. Just like us meeting. Oh, I forgot to tell a story. So when I was prepping for the interview, I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this documentary. I'm watching the documentary, and the scene of Michelle Rodriguez with holding that stick and this Machu Picchu behind her, I was like, wait a minute, I watched this documentary. I watched this documentary years ago. And it was introduced to me by Graham Hancock. Do you know him? He's
Yes.
the one. Yeah, he's the one that had the TED Talk on ayahuasca that was banned. So I watched that video
Yes.
like 15
Yes.
years ago, and then he told me about rhythmia and about your documentary and all about. Can you believe that? I know. And then I met him
Wow.
in Toronto. Incredible. And now here I am meeting you. It's just so incredible. So yes,
It's
nothing is
really
coincidence.
cool. Nothing
Yeah.
is coincidence. Divine
And
timing. And I've told
yes.
people, like, if there's one thing I've learned in life is that uh all the things that I thought were the worst things that happened to me in my life, they
Yeah.
turned out to be the best. And kind of
Maybe
vice versa too. What I thought was great was turned out to be not so great.
not the best. So, in
Uh-huh.
your opinion, and let's get just let it out here on the show. No worries. You can say what you
Okay,
feel.
cool.
If
Sure.
psychedelics have the potential, as we explained, to heal trauma, PTSD, addiction, why, in your opinion, were they banned 50 years ago or more? And they were
Yeah.
so heavily stigmatized. I remember, do you remember that commercial of breaking an egg? And it's like, this is your brain on drugs, And there's like that whole
Right.
campaign. And I mean, my sister, she's 4 years older than me, and she's totally against any of this stuff, because she was so brainwashed, right, by all of it. So, in your opinion, what's happening, or what happened there?
Yeah, that's a great question. We only know now, looking back, what really happened, and it was sort of like a perfect storm of three things. Number one was that the Vietnam War had broken out in the 1960s, and the the CIA and the government, they did experiments with LSD and other psychedelics, and they realized that when people had a breakthrough experience and they were expanding their consciousness, they did not want to fight and go to war. So the government was like, this is really bad. Like, we cannot have people taking this. They're not going to support this war effort. That was number one. Number two was the pharmaceutical companies who had just come out with their antidepressants, their SSRIs, and they were bringing those out. And so they saw psychedelic medicine because there were doctors that were using LSD very
Mhm.
successfully out in San Francisco area and some other places, and using it in psychology and having huge breakthroughs. And so they saw that and they're like, we don't need this. This is going to disrupt our whole cash cow that we intend to have for the next 100 years of these antidepressant pills that you have to take all the time. And then the
Mhm.
third one, probably the most sinister one, and the one that actually paid for all of the propaganda that affected all of us, including your sister, was the alcohol companies. Because the alcohol companies knew that there was a day like today, 2026, when younger people and others were going to not drink alcohol. They were going to take marijuana, they were going to take psilocybin mushrooms and have a really fun experience on a Saturday night without ever taking alcohol and dealing with all the negative side effects. So those three got together basically in their own way and said, we've got to put a stop to this. And the alcohol company, they were funding tens of millions of dollars a year, telling people, if you take these things, you're going to jump off a building, you're going to, freak out and you kill your brain and all this. And they did a great job at that. The reality of it is that, tens of millions of people have had psychedelic experience. Only a handful of people have ever, taken their life or anything like that. And I really believe that those people had mental illness. They were going to kill themselves anyways. This might have been, some element of what happened to them, but they were going to take their life because, you can't have all these tens of millions of people who have had amazing experience and then focus
Mhm.
on,
Mhm.
a few
Right.
hundred people that had a bad experience. And you extrapolate that out to today and you think about um, the prohibition that still exists. It has a lot to do with these antidepressants. They when people talk about, oh, how safe are mushrooms, how safe is ayahuasca, like, people have died from doing ibogaine, they'll say. And you look at it and, to be honest, 50 people have died in the last 50 years using ibogaine. Probably
Wow.
1,000 people today died from the
Mhm.
negative side effects of antidepressants. So what are we talking about here? If those
Mhm.
people, and those 50 people that died using ibogaine, almost all of them were drug addicts who had hid some drugs and
Yeah.
had taken the drugs just before they got the ibogaine and it stopped their heart. And so they just pound that message home that this is dangerous and scary and gonna kill you and all that. But when you look at it up against these antidepressants, you have to take those every day. They build up in your body, they change your brain chemistry, and they have horrifying side effects that are worse than the original thing that you were trying to deal with. And so here we are, we're coming out of this prohibition, and I think it's been fueled by us going through the pandemic and people
Mm-hmm.
realizing that they have to take their own mental health very seriously and that they can't go back to what we were doing, which was talk therapy, antidepressants, people medicating themselves with alcohol and, opioids and things like that. So
I
people
agree.
started just like they do, with their doctor, they come forward and they say, "Hey, doctor, what do you think about this? I saw it on TV. I heard about it. What do you think?" And the doctor's like, "Wow, okay, yeah, that sounds cool." And so now people with AI and social media and stuff, back in the 60s, when they created that prohibition, um, there was only like three major television networks and a couple of major newspapers that were nationwide. So if they wanted to discredit something, it was just totally easy for them to do. But today, with social media and everything where we're at, it can never be suppressed again. And I'm so excited because in the 60s, when the psychedelic culture hit, this renaissance hit, it changed everything, music, art,
Right.
business
Yeah.
models, culture,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's about to happen again. It's happening, and we're going to go through these transformations, but nobody's going to be able to suppress it. And when you do come out of a prohibition like we did with alcohol and some other things, there's like this graph. If you look at the graph, it's like some people take it, more people, and then all of a sudden it's like spikes. And so
Right.
I'm predicting tens of millions of people in the next
Mm.
12 months, 24 months are going to have their first psychedelic experience, and everything's going to
Ah,
change.
so excited. Yeah, so excited because interestingly, when Michelle Rodriguez was commenting on her experience, I was like, wow, I feel the same way. Or I've said those words. It just totally sounded like me as well. And just because it does raise this global consciousness, right? Just it allows us to open up and just find these new ways of thinking and letting go of the heaviness and the guilt and the anger and all these things that we're just too jaded in our everyday life. And so, whatever it is that's going on
Yes.
during that psychedelic experience, it just allows us to open up more. And the more you're open, the more you're open to other experiences as well and other opportunities. And it's true. Like when I came back from my ayahuasca experience, I was like, when I first saw a spider before my Aya experience, I'd be smacking that thing, get out of my,
Yeah.
my way.
Right.
Now I only do it. I only do it to cockroaches though. I still gotta step
Uh-huh.
on them.
Oh,
But
yes.
everything else, I swear, like when I'm going for my walks and I step on a snail, I'm like, ow. Like I feel so connected
Uh-huh.
to everything, right? That we're not, we're just more than this physical body and we're connected to everybody else. Now when, somebody gives me attitude or they're just, I know there's something going on there, right? I'm not judging as fast
Yeah.
as I used to do, right? So this
Beautiful.
just global awareness and consciousness that we're raising, it's going to be incredible just to witness. So that's what I love about how this psychedelic renaissance is just it's happening. And do you feel like it's happening in North America primarily, or is Europe, have you heard anything in Europe, like even in terms
Yeah.
of celebrities are
There's
helping?
yeah, there's quite a bit of it going on around the world. I think, the United States is happening really fast because I think, we have the biggest problem. We take 50% of all the, pharmaceutical drugs in the world, even though we're only like
Mm.
10% of their population. So we're, you know, heading towards the cliff faster than anybody else. And this is our only off ramp. So it is accelerating quite a bit. Um, you know, I'm I created this psychedelic concierge training program because it is, as we just said, so important, like how you prep somebody, how you guide them, and how you integrate them, that there's a methodology to that, and there's best practices, and there's a certain reverence that you can instill in somebody. And so I wanted to have these people all over the United States so that when I get somebody who says to me, hey, I need to have a psychedelic experience, or what do you think about this? I could send them to somebody who's trained and qualified that I know is going to give them a good experience. So I started to build this network, and it's starting to grow really fast. The training is very in depth. We want you to know all the medicines, because even if you're have an affinity towards one, let's say it's mushrooms or microdosing or ayahuasca, it's important to know about all the others, because a lot of times when people come to you and say, oh, I want to do ayahuasca, and you're like, well, why do you want to do it? What's your intention? What's your traumas? Then you realize, oh, you know what? They're out of touch with nature. They don't need ayahuasca. They actually need San Pedro, or, they've lost joy. They just need some microdose mushrooms. So you can, put people in the right channel with what's going to be best for them. And it's so exciting because coaches and therapists and psychologists and these people, most of them kind of dread their job, because they're making really good suggestions to these people. They're really giving good advice, and then the people just don't follow it. They come back every week and they didn't do anything. They didn't change anything. They're still talking about this and that from the past. But when you have integrated psychedelics with that therapy or that coaching, now they're neuroplastic. Now they're like, let me start journaling. Oh, what else do you think I should do? Oh, check out what I did. Look at this insight I had. And so it's so fulfilling. And I'm telling all these coaches and therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists and everybody, learn about psychedelic medicine, because your clients are going to be asking anyways. They probably already are. And they expect you to be a professional, that be informed, and to be able to help them out. And so it's so cool. I'm sure you know the difference between, if you do a breath class at the YMCA and it's regular folks, or if you do a breath class with people who've done ayahuasca or iboga. It's like, you're talking about
Yeah.
such a different level
Different level.
of commitment and what they get
Yes.
out of it. So it goes with everything right now. It's like, you can't. I say to people, and this may be the most obnoxious thing I say, is that, if you go through your whole life and you have these receptors in your brain for these natural plants that are growing out of the ground that God put here, and you never experience those, you could have wasted your entire life here. And I wouldn't want to be, sitting in front of God, having died. And then I say to, God's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I died because of this. And God's like, well, why didn't you take some of those natural plants that I left there for you to break addiction or tap into spirituality? And if I'm like, well, because this guy in a white coat told me not to do it, God's going to be
Right.
like, guess what? You're going back for another 100 lifetimes right now, because you didn't learn a thing. You're not thinking for yourself. You're not
It's so
using your
true.
intuition. So
It's so true. And speaking of spirituality, a lot of people describe having a spiritual experience. And in your opinion, do you see it more as medicine or spiritual medicine or both?
yeah, I mean, I think the spiritual aspect of it is critical, because there's a lot of reports of people who, let's say with ketamine, for example, where, they have the ketamine, but they don't have some big experience, but they do get the metabolization afterwards, and they grow new neural
Mhm.
pathways, and their score on these standardized tests is way better than it was before they had it. But then if you look at the
Mhm.
people that also had a deep spiritual experience, like, they're no longer even on the test. The test doesn't apply to them. So
Mm.
I think it's a
Mm.
really, it can be the thing that makes it, like, life changing versus, incrementally making your life better if you have that spiritual experience. And I want to point out, what's really cool that's happening right now is a lot of people who have no idea about this. They literally don't even know what a psychedelic psilocybin mushroom is. And they're in their 50s or 60s. And they're getting their minds blown by real science. And so there was an example that I give, which was Tony Robbins recently was on the Patrick Bet David podcast. And on the podcast, they were just talking about everyday stuff. And the host, Patrick, said to Tony Robbins, he said, Tony, what's the best thing you've ever seen for depression? And Tony Robbins said, psilocybin mushrooms study from from Johns Hopkins University. It was over 60% effective for treating depression. And the host guy, his like brain was like melting. He was like, wow, he didn't even know what to make of it. But Tony Robbins went on to say that because this was older research, he said, I decided to redo the test myself with my own clinic and all these modern day ways to measure everything. And he's like, we did the exact same test with the psilocybin, and my results were over 80% of the people were no
Wow.
longer had PTSD, no longer had depression. And, it's just like, so when you see the science and you see, you know,
Mm,
this happening. And I think the big mistake that people have is that they are looking for the medical establishment, their doctor, to tell them that this is okay or this is going to be positive. And another not popular thing that I say a lot, which is that doctors don't even know about nutrition, okay, which could solve
exactly.
80% of the things that they're working on. They don't have any idea about that. So why would I think that they know about plant medicine and psychedelic medicine? They don't. And if you're going to wait around years for them to come around, you may lose somebody in your life. You may commit suicide. You may be depressed. You may miss out on your life. Don't wait for these doctors to come around. There's already doctors at Johns Hopkins, Yale, University of California, San Francisco, Stanford University that have recently done the research and proven this. Those are the doctors to listen to, not your internal medicine doctor in Boca Raton. And you're like, what do you think about this? And they're like, that's not settled science yet. Why don't you keep taking those antidepressants? And they're like, but we're in this moment where that's not enough. People are, rejecting
Hmm.
what came before and need
Yes.
something new.
So, do you see it fitting into mainstream healthcare soon? Maybe in
Absolutely.
5 years, 10 years from now?
No, 2 years, 2 years.
2 years.
And I'm going
Okay.
to tell you why I say that.
Mm.
There's something really big happening. It could happen today, it could be tomorrow. But in the United States, the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, they asked Health and Human Services, which is run by Robert Kennedy Jr., to make
Mm.
a recommendation on rescheduling psilocybin mushrooms off of Schedule 1, which Schedule 1 is means that a compound has no medical benefit and is highly addictive. And
Mm.
so there are things like heroin and crack and cocaine and meth that are on Schedule 1. But unfortunately, up until very recently, marijuana was on Schedule 1. Right now, psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, ibogaine, they're all on Schedule 1, which makes no sense because they have huge medical benefit and they're
Mhm.
some of the least addictive compounds on the entire planet. There's nobody gets addicted to ibogaine or doing
Mhm.
mushrooms. It's just too intense. There's no way
Especially
you're.
not the taste. Ugh,
Yeah,
sawdust. I
exactly.
swear.
Nothing about it is addictive. So, if you said $10 million right now, Zappy, do ibogaine, I would literally say no, and I wouldn't even give it a second thought because I did it. I had it. I don't need it. I'm good. And yeah, I'm not doing it again. So, in that way, this has been a flawed system. And so the DEA asked about psilocybin for Health and Human Services, which recently rescheduled cannabis, marijuana, from Schedule 1, where it was, down to Schedule 3 so that doctors can prescribe it to patients medically. And
Wow.
that transition, what's important about it is they're going to make a ruling any day now, any hour now, on psilocybin. I think they're going to move it to Schedule 3 where marijuana is, where they're accepting that it does have medical benefit, but they're still, I guess, concerned about addictiveness, which they shouldn't be. But they have to make that switch. The cool thing is that when psilocybin moves off of Schedule 1, because psilocybin's already had a phase 1 clinical trial, it's going to be available for people to use under what's called the Right to Try Act, which is an act that President Trump put into law during his first term, it was mostly for cancer drugs, where it was like if a cancer drug's gone through phase 1 clinical trials, proven to be safe, but there's no long-term data on it, you have the right to try it to try to save your life. And obviously, if something goes wrong, you can't sue people, but it is your right to try it. And so when
Mm.
psilocybin moves off of Schedule 1, you're going to have millions of people in the United States, 10 million, I'm predicting, within the first, year that that's available, are going to try psilocybin, either, a microdose, a macrodose, or a social dose. And they're going to realize, wow, this is what I wanted to feel like when I was taking those antidepressants or drinking the alcohol. And mushrooms are going to sweep through this country like nothing ever has before. It's already racing through the middle of this country where the kind of farmland is, where these mothers, they're called mothers for microdosing, where these women have started to uh, take microdoses, and then they're sharing them with their community. Obviously, women make most of the healthcare decisions in the home. So if something works for them, they're going to suggest it for their husband. So it's ripping through the country. And then when we
Mm.
get the stigma off of it with the Schedule 3, that's going to be amazing. And then RFK Jr. also said that he wants to have veterans accessing psychedelic medicine within the next 12 months. And I think what's
Wow.
going to happen there is they're going to get access to, ketamine, to psilocybin mushrooms, and to iboga or ibogaine. Um, and when those results come in, because these people are being cared for by the Veterans Administration, the VA, what's going to happen is we're going to look at that data 1 year after they get it. We're going to look at the data because they control all the medicine that these people are taking and everything, testing them and all that. And then we're going to look at that data from the veterans and be like, wow, suicide rates are down 50%. The medication that they're on is down 50%. Wow. They're going to go, let's give this to everybody in society. Everybody needs this. And so it's going
Right.
to be through that very standardized work that happens with the veterans that is going to lead to, tens of millions of people, 100 million people in the United States having that psychedelic experience. And there is a statistic that 39 million people in the United States have already identified themselves as psychedelic curious. So some number of those 39 million, let's call it
For
10
sure.
million, are going to try it. And I think a lot of those people, I think the number is something like 70% of those people said they would want to be guided through the journey by somebody who's knows what they're doing. And so,
Hmm.
wow, like we got to train a lot of guides. That's what this
Yeah,
whole thing's about. That's why
exactly.
I'm happy to be
So,
talking to you. So,
yeah, so tell us a little bit more about your program. So it sets the guide that they're therapists or practitioners.
yeah, they come from all walks of, life. Some are nurses, veterans, housewives, uh, all everything, just everybody. But psychedelics have made their life better, and they want to pay that forward, but they don't know how, and they don't know how to hold space or prep people or integrate them. They don't have
Mm.
a network because this is still underground, so there's not like a professional organization that you can, look at the standards and stuff. Plus, not knowing how to dose people and things like that, it's not clear like other industries are. So
Hmm.
we put together the first certified CPD accredited, that's continuing professional development, the CPD. It's accredited where you can get your continuing education units that you need as a professional. So a therapist, a doctor, they have to take a certain amount of courses each year to maintain their license. And because our course is so exhaustive and it's professionally done and it has its standards, um, it is they're eligible for these credits if they take the course, which is huge. And so
Mm.
you go through the course, you learn about everything from all the medicines to the ethics to trauma informed guiding to into preparation, the journey, integration, how to handle groups versus individuals, how to keep yourself and your energy clean, everything that you need to know, how to charge people, how to run a business, how to market the business. We're really, what's different about us is I think there's organizations out there that will train you on how to guide people, but you pay a lot of money and then you know how to guide people, but you're like, where do I get my clients? How do I market myself? What do I do with this? And it's frustrating. So we came at this with a real career approach where part of the business is showing you how to identify your ideal clients, how to create these internet funnels to get your right proper client, how to charge, how to market within the rules that exist today for marketing in the gray area. And so it takes somebody, if they worked really hard, it would probably take you about 12 weeks to get through all the program, because you do have to, pass each level with like an 80% or better to move on to the next module. So it's not something that you can just, do in a weekend and hit play on the video, walk out of the room, and then get your certificate. You really got to learn this. And then you have to do, in our course, 20-hour practicum hours, which is actually holding space and, either holding space yourself or, supporting people holding space. So we help these people to get these practicum hours by, allowing them to sit with other people in the program while they're holding space, or some of this work can be done over Zoom as well. Some of the ketamine guiding is done over Zoom. So people build up those practicum hours so they have the confidence that they know exactly what they're doing, not just the knowledge, but the real hands-on experience. And then we have them do a required capstone project, which is basically a project that shows what you learned and how you intend to use it, whether that's a retreat that you're going to set up, or a microdosing guide that you're creating, or a website that's based on your work. So you have to really go through that. And at the end of that, you are absolutely, I feel comfortable with anybody who went through that training holding space for anybody in the world. And I would not say that about any other program, because it is that in depth. There's like a couple programs, people are like, well, I took a program on guiding and it was a 7-hour program. I took it. I know what I'm doing. And it's like, you definitely don't know what you're doing. And you probably could even create more trauma in somebody if something goes wrong. You're not going to be able to understand what to do and how to bring the person back and how to help them to get the most out of it. So potentially you're actually doing damage if you don't really know what you're doing. So we're really proud to be the first and only accredited psychedelic guiding and concierge program. And I just want to make a comment that we're training people to be guides, but we're also training them to be concierges. And I consider myself a psychedelic concierge, which means, kind of like at a hotel, when you go up to the concierge, it's similar, where you say, hey, where should we go to dinner tonight? And they ask you a series of questions before they make a recommendation. They say, what kind of food do you like? Do you like wine? Do you want to hear music, indoor, outdoor? And then you tell them and they make a recommendation. So with the psychedelic concierge, the questions I'm asking is, what's your intention for doing this? What traumas are you trying to overcome? And then based on that, I can make a recommendation for what psychedelic medicine you should do, where you should go, who you should be with, because they're of the highest quality. And so we're really training people where, whatever level of this, if you want to work with clients and guide them through the process, do it. If you want to just point them in the right direction, that's a great business too, and really fulfilling. All of this is like, because sometimes people get uptight when psychedelic medicine or plant medicine has to do with money. They're like, wow, this shouldn't have anything to do with money. And it's like, no, it really needs to, because if you're going to be holding space for people, you have to be in the right frequency energy. You can't be in a scarcity mindset, a lack. You can't be wondering, oh my God, is the electricity going to go out right now while I'm guiding this person? You might be able to help one person or two or a few people in that type of a lack mentality. But if you want to be able to sustain a career, really help people and work with them long term, you have to be okay too. So we get people to understand also that this is really important work, and what you're doing is so important that if you can do this work and you could keep somebody from having to go to, rehab for 45 days and probably, leave their job and maybe ruin their career or get divorced or, be on antidepressants, drinking alcohol. Like if you can save somebody from that, what was it worth? I mean, to some people, that's worth $1 million. It's worth all the money in the world. So for you as a psychedelic concierge guide, it's very important that you have the right mentality to understand that you do have to make this a career. You do have to be sustained in order to be a really good space holder for other people. And so
Yeah.
that's part of what we teach. And we want our people to be, all over the country, all over the world. We have people. We have Peru, we have Costa Rica, we got Canada, we got people in Hawaii. They're already kind of all over the world. And as they're fully trained, they graduate, they do all their hours and stuff. I feel comfortable sending leads that I'm getting that are coming in already to me. And, I'm lucky. I have crazy leads coming in and people call me and, I got a call not too long ago and or email and somebody said, can you do a program for 20 people at the Lanai Four Seasons for our son's 21st birthday? And I was like, shit, yeah, I could do that. Like, absolutely. I can go to Hawaii. But I
Yeah.
need support. I need other people with me. I can't handle 20 people. I got to bring, three or four more psychedelic
Hmm.
concierge guides to support that. I got to bring a breath person like yourself. I've got to bring, you know, the right people to create a really good container. But these are like very fulfilling, but also very lucrative. And I always say, the final point I want to make about the career side is that I believe that psychedelic medicine guiding is going to be one of the only jobs that is not taken over by AI
Yes.
because AI, yeah, AI is going to take everybody's job from the lawyer to the robot's going to be doing the plumbing and the, carpentry and all that stuff. The only jobs I think are going to be left are taking care of babies, taking care of the elderly, and guiding people in a psychedelic journey. Because when you're in a psychedelic journey, you really want to have somebody there who has a human nervous system that you're
Mm.
responding to, not some AI telling you what most people are probably experiencing. That's not going to
Yeah.
cut it in psychedelics. So uh,
That's a good
this will
point.
never be eliminated. And so it's a lot of fun to be in that place where you're not worried about your career going away. You actually
Yeah.
have 39 million people in the United States saying, I'm curious, I need
About
support.
this,
So
yes. And
uh,
I do love it. It sounds incredible and sounds incredible, the program. I do love it that it's got a business side because very seldom when you take a certification of this sort, whether it's personal development or for an actual career, very seldom does it have a business side to it. So I like how you are training people to make it your career because a lot of us are doing it just for the goodness of, we just want to share this modality, the psychedelic medicine that work for us. And so it's great that you are emphasizing that, hey, this needs to be a proper business and sustainable business. So that's bravo
yeah,
to you for
yeah.
sure.
I'm
Mhm.
I'm really lucky. My partner Sean Gray, he comes from the business side of things and helping, really create incredible online businesses and educational and monetization and all these things. So it's part of what we're doing. We're very selective about who we choose. We've had thousands of applications. We've taken less than 10% of the people who've applied
Mm.
because we really want it to be the right people so that our community is strong. And, sometimes people are a little even too close to their own healing journey to be,
Mhm.
ready for other
Right.
people or their addiction. They just
Right.
got through that. And, they've got the passion, but they're not quite there yet. So we turn down, plus 90% of the people. But
Mm.
the people
Wow.
we have, I mean, they're like, these are rock star people. And if
Mhm.
anybody's interested, check out psychedelicconcierge.com. Find me Zappy Zapolin on social media and see if this is right for you. It's going to be an amazing career, and you get to collaborate with such cool people because like yourself, for example, you and your team elevated that event. That was an iboga event, but it wouldn't have been the same without that integration, without those tools that you can go home with and work with. And so it's very collaborative. And because there's so many people, that 39 million number, it's like you don't have to treat this like a regular business where it's me versus you and I got to get the client before you. It's like, no, there's so many people that we're in a co-opetition moment here where we can all lean on each
Mm.
other and each other's best practices and knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to support these people. And so
Because
it's
like you
fun
said,
when I got it.
yeah, some people resonate with certain practitioners or guides, and so you don't need to have that competitive sort of red ocean strategy. It is more of a cooperative for sure. There's room for everybody to
It
really show
is.
their talents. This is
Yeah.
amazing. Well, yes.
No, I was just going to say, um, some people resonate with me, but again, if you're a veteran and you're trying to overcome something, you probably want to work with one of our veterans who've been trained. Or if
Mm,
you're whatever you are, an older person, you might want an older person. If you're young, you might want young. So it's like whatever you are, maybe it's somebody who works with women or so. Everybody can have their own niche. It can be supportive, and there's just too many clients already that are looking for this. So it's really just a function of get educated and figure out what you like to do, because that's the fun part is you get to do what you like to do. I like to hold space sometimes, but uh I don't have the patience to do certain work like iboga and be there for 24 hours and days. It's like that doesn't fit who I am. But I love working with people with ketamine. I love talking about microdosing. I love, these different things that appeal to me. And so you can really pick in your space what you want to do. And anytime I've been in at the beginning of a mega trend, it's been very easy for me to make money, to be successful by just being there early. And so when I've been
yeah.
there early in the infomercial space or the .com domain space, where I was able to get domain names like
Hmm.
beer.com and diamond.com and stuff, I was just early, so it was easy. And when legal cannabis happened, I was able to do really well there just by being early and being part of it. And so here we are, this psychedelic prohibition's about to end, and we're about to go, on a hockey stick curve. And if you're get knowledgeable and you get involved today, you have a career for the next your whole life, and it's going to fulfill you and it's going to support you in a way that other people are not going to have careers that are going to be left. So get
Mm,
in
yeah, no,
if it
incredible.
resonates with you, learn now. Don't wait until it's legal or that kind of
Yes,
thing. Get
yes.
in there.
Get up. Yes, I agree. And it's no coincidence that you are listening to this podcast. You chose to listen to this podcast. So I agree. Get on it for sure. So this is incredible. I want to get a little personal. And just a few more questions, and then I promise I'll let you go. But what is the best advice you've ever been given? I'm curious.
Sure. Um, the best advice I was probably given, other than God telling me that if I didn't even
Mm,
know how I was breathing, that I shouldn't think that God needs my help to save the world and change people, and I should just be in gratitude. Um, some of the things that maybe it wasn't even advice; it was just looking back at my life at this point now that I'm older and looking at the things that I thought were great and realizing they were the worst thing, and realizing that the
mm,
things that were horrible to me, that I thought my life was over, actually turned out to be the best thing. And I'll give you a personal example. One of the domain names that I was involved with is creditcards.com during, the internet time. Uh, I
So what, you
built it
just
up with a
bought these
team and
you bought these credit cards? Is that what you were credit cards, these .com
no,
domains?
yeah, I bought them from people that already had taken them, but it was like 1998, 99, around then, when people didn't really understand what it was. They didn't realize it was like virtual real estate and marketing channels and stuff. So I went around to people that own beer.com and diamond.com and creditcards.com, and I offered to buy their domain name. And the first one I bought was beer.com. I found the kid that owned it. I told him I would give him $100,000 for the beer.com domain name because I thought it would be a cool marketing channel. And I said, I'll give you $80,000 and you keep 20% of the company. So when it does well, you can have some upside. So I bought it from him. I redid the website. We were giving out emails. I put some press out about what we were doing. And 2 months after I bought it from him for $80,000, I sold it to Interbrew up in Canada for $7 million. So I was like, oh, wow, like this is a pretty good business. What other domains? So I wound up getting, diamond.com and doing a deal. And eventually I wound up doing creditcards.com, which is an incredible category in the internet. My friends and I, we developed it with a team, and we got to a certain level, and somebody said, can I buy it? And my partners, who hadn't had some of the exits that I had, said, oh, let's sell it. We're going to sell it. We bought it for $100,000. We're going to sell it for $3 million, and we've made money already. And so the I wasn't in a position to stop the sale, and it happened. And the guy who bought it from us, he just kind of worked the business and, asked for more money from the credit card companies as he started to send more leads. And 2 years to the month that we sold it for 3 million, he turned around and sold it for 133 million. And so I was like sitting there like, oh my God, like I just lost $40 million that I was like supposed to have. I was there, like, why would this happen, universe? Why would you do this to me? And in that anxiety, I used to have to see the commercials come on CNN, and CNBC, these creditcards.com commercials with like my logo, my business, and I was like, why? And so in my ketamine journey, which it came a few years after that, I decided to look at that really closely in the journey. I said, I'm gonna, I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm still angry about this. I'm
Mm,
still
mm,
bitter about what happened. And I went into the ketamine experience, and I saw my life, if I had stuck with it and I had been able to sell it, and I was sitting there and I was on the back of a boat and I was smoking a cigar and I wasn't like doing anything, you know what I mean? And the ketamine like showed me my life now. I was like, would you rather have made the reality of truth film and helped maybe millions of people? Or would you like to be sitting on a boat, smoking a cigar? Which one? And I was like, wow, I look at it like that. There's no question. I would rather have done what I did. And then from that
yeah.
moment, I came out of it. I was just like, that doesn't even bother me. I still see commercials and stuff for it, and I just smile. I'm just like, wow, this is like
Mhm.
what I thought was so horrible. If that hadn't happened to me, I never would have done the plant medicine in
Yes.
the first place. So
Wow. Wow. That's
yeah, so
incredible. That's
it's
beautiful advice for sure. What a story. Just I could talk to
uh,
you forever, Zappy.
ditto,
Seriously.
ditto.
So tell us, what are your top three non-negotiable self-care habits that you do on a daily basis?
For me, one of them is exercising, whether that's
Mhm,
walking or jogging or something like that, because I'm a better person when I
mhm,
get some of my energy out. Because I feel like I have a lot of energy. And if I don't get it out, I can be agitated, I can be restless
mhm,
and all that. So as long as I get some exercise, I feel a lot better about how I approach the world. Meditation is another one.
mhm,
Um, where I've been meditating now, for 30 years plus. And it's a really big part of, I think, how I am even able to, visualize what might be next or to settle my nervous system. Because a friend of mine always said, everybody's just trying to, settle their nervous system. So as you go through the day, you're like, oh, let me take some coffee. Oh, I'll eat some food. I'll take some alcohol. I'll take an Ambien to go to sleep. They're just trying to settle the nervous system. But when you're microdosing or you're on a regimen of plant medicine, you're already fine. And so you don't feel the need to regulate yourself with these other things. And so
yes.
I put the third one is put my money where my mouth is, have a certain amount of psychedelics. It's not every day, but sometimes I need a microdose. Sometimes I need to go real deep. And sometimes I have to
Mhm,
explore within things. But those are my three sort of non negotiables, like anytime I start to feel like some anxiety, like, oh, what am I doing? How am I going to? I'm like, wait a minute, holy shit, I'm not even doing anything. Why don't I just go inside myself, settle myself, find the
Yes.
answer? And so those are my
Mhm.
three. And
Amazing. Yes, you have the tools. We always have the tools. And some of us develop the tools a lot more, optimize these tools, but we all have access to these tools. And now with the work that you're doing,
yes,
training guides, there's just so much out there for us to
yeah.
use.
And I want to
So
add one other little thing there is in my meditation, in my exercise, I do this gratitude
mm,
practice. And for me, this comes out of the knowledge that the if I'm here in this miracle that God showed me, I'm in a miracle and I just need to enjoy it. If I can wake up every day, go to sleep every day, throughout the
mm,
day, be in gratitude, even though I don't know why I'm here, I don't know what the rules are, I don't know what's coming next. If I can be in that, you know, chaos, but and still be grateful, I believe that's how people will be judged after life. It's not what deeds did you do, because you see a lot of bad people do nice things, or they're nice to their family or whatever, but it's like if you are in gratitude even though you don't know why you're here and what's happening, I believe that that is how you're going to be judged. So I try to
mm,
really stay in that grateful state that I am in a
wow.
miracle. The
Hmm.
somehow the sun is 93 million miles away, so we have an atmosphere, and I'm on the phone,
Yeah.
to read in real time video to somebody across the world. Like, this is a miracle. If somebody saw this 500 years ago, they would think you were a wizard or a god or something like that. And here we are, we're like, oh, that's not a big deal. I need like a burning bush in order to be, feel like a miracle. So it's like, if
Yeah.
you can step into it and say, I'm in a miracle, I'm grateful to be here. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm grateful. Then I think your life is going to be, you're going to be connected to the miracle. And then anytime you get out of the miracle, psychedelic medicine, plant medicine puts you back into that miracle state. You come out and you reconnect with the miracle that you're in. And I think that's the real benefit of psychedelics and plant medicine.
Wow, Zappy, that was amazing. Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up this right here. So, so profound. So resonate with what you're saying every single day. I just like super grateful that I get to do the work that I'm doing. And those days when you're just happy for no reason, you shouldn't really be happy because there's all kinds of crap that's going on. And you're just like, but I'm happy and I'm feeling this like immense amount of gratitude. And it's just so, so profound to reconnect with that because at the end of the day, like, yes, like we should be so happy that we are living this beautiful life and every day making decisions to either optimize it
Yeah.
or not, right? So every day we have that choice to be happy or to express joy in our
Yeah.
lives, right? Not just with our loved ones, but with everybody. And I know I sound so corny or cheesy, but like if we all do just a bit every day, like the world will definitely be a better place. And none of the stuff that's happening now will hold, right? Will be sustained. So I'm just hoping and wishing that more people listen to this episode and try it out or pique their curiosity, maybe contact one of your guides, maybe become a guide and just like really contribute a little more to this amazing miracle that we're all living. So I just want to thank you for taking the time I know you're super busy and just share your beautiful story. And I could have talked to you for another hour for sure, but
Yeah,
we do
for
need to
sure.
wrap it up.
I'm
And
sure I'm
yeah, if
going to
there's,
see you in person one of these days soon again. And,
yeah,
you know,
yay.
uh, what the work you do is amazing. And so, you got to have that work that you do where for them through the meditation, through the breathing, that you can bring yourself back to present moment awareness, because that's where the gratitude's
Mhm.
at. It's not out
Yes.
there in the future and some other thing. It's like being in the moment. And so, I honor what you do, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much for your amazing time and the amazing conversation and the insights. Learned so much from you, and I can't wait to see you in person and for this episode to air. I'm really, really excited about it.
Awesome.
Have a beautiful day. Enjoy. Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Care Goddess podcast. If today's episode inspired you, share it with another woman who's ready to reclaim her vitality and lead from within. To continue your journey, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with me on ritasavoya.com. Until next time, remember, self-care isn't selfish, it's your superpower. Take a deep breath in, exhale, and keep rising. Ciao for now.